A 50-something woman in bedazzled capri pants was standing on my private dock wielding a measuring tape like a weapon of mass inspection. She wasn't just standing there. She was actively measuring the distance between my boat cleats while muttering about compliance violations. When I stepped outside with my morning coffee, she spun around and jabbed the tape measure at me like she was trying to ward off a vampire. "This is an illegal monopolization of waterfront access," she shrieked, her voice hitting frequencies that made the nearby herons take flight. Then she pulled out her phone and actually dialed 911. "Yes, I need to report someone hoarding community resources," she told the dispatcher while maintaining eye contact with me. "He's created a hostile aquatic environment. My name is Daniel Morrison, and I'm 43 years old. I bought my house in Willowcrest Gardens specifically because it came with one of only 3 private docks on Lake Serenity. The previous owner had warned me about the HOA, but I figured, how bad could it be? I kept to myself, maintained my property, and enjoyed my quiet mornings fishing off my dock. For 2 years, everything was perfect. I'd wake up at dawn, brew some coffee, and spend an hour on the water before heading to my job as a software developer. My neighbors seemed nice enough, though I mostly just exchanged pleasantries and kept my distance. I'm not antisocial, just introverted. And after my divorce, I valued my peaceful sanctuary more than ever. Enter Beverly Hutchinson, newly elected HOA president and self-appointed guardian of all things regulatory. Beverly was the type of person who color-coded her grocery lists and once tried to establish a neighborhood-wide grass height standard that required daily measurements. She'd only been president for 3 months, but already she'd instituted mandatory mailbox inspections, a registry for approved bird feeder designs, and something she called aesthetic compliance walkthroughs. The woman ran our HOA like a tiny dictatorship, complete with laminated ID badges for her compliance committee. I'd managed to stay off her radar until the day she discovered my dock wasn't technically covered by HOA regulations. It started innocently enough with a notice in my mailbox printed on official HOA letterhead. Community Lake Appreciation Day, it announced in bold letters. All residents invited to enjoy our beautiful waterfront amenities. The flyer included a map of the lake with little stars marking community access points. Except one of those stars was sitting right on top of my private dock. I figured it was a mistake and ignored it. Big mistake. The following Saturday, I woke up to find a line of folding chairs set up on my dock and Beverly directing traffic like an airport ground crew. "Right this way, folks," she chirped to a family of 5 dragging a cooler toward my property. The Morrison dock has the best morning sun exposure. I rushed outside in my bathrobe, coffee sloshing everywhere. "Excuse me, this is private property," I said, trying to keep my voice level. Beverly turned to me with a smile that could freeze antifreeze. "According to Section 12.4 of our HOA guidelines, all waterfront access must be shared during designated community events," she said, producing a laminated copy of said guidelines from her fanny pack. "I haven't agreed to any community events on my dock," I replied. That's when her smile faltered, and she pulled out her phone to call an emergency HOA board meeting right there on my lawn. The next few weeks became a war of attrition. First, Beverly sent her teenage grandson to fish off my dock every morning at 5 a.m., complete with a Bluetooth speaker blasting mumble rap. When I asked him to leave, he claimed his grandma said it was a public dock now. Then, mysterious things started happening. My kayak rope was cut, sending it drifting into the reeds. Someone scattered breadcrumbs all over my dock, attracting an aggressive army of ducks and geese that left droppings everywhere. A drone appeared every evening at exactly 6:15, hovering just over my property line and recording video. The final straw came when I found "Sharing is Caring" spray-painted in neon pink across my dock walkway. I decided to fight fire with proper documentation. I installed a security camera system and posted a simple sign that read, "Private property, no trespassing." The sign lasted exactly 14 hours before Beverly showed up with her measuring tape, a clipboard, and what appeared to be a notarized letter from the HOA demanding immediate removal of all exclusionary signage. "This is a violation of community standards," she declared, actually climbing over my gate while reading from her clipboard. "The HOA has determined that your dock falls under the Shared Amenities Clause due to its proximity to community waters." I stood there sipping my coffee while she rattled off made-up regulations. When she finally paused for breath, I calmly asked her to leave my property. That's when she completely lost it. Beverly's face turned a shade of purple I'd previously only seen on eggplants. She started ripping down my no trespassing sign while screaming about maritime law and communal water rights. "You can't privatize nature," she howled, throwing pieces of my sign into the lake. "The HOA has jurisdiction over all structures within 50 feet of the waterline." I pulled out my phone to record her tantrum, which only made her angrier. She grabbed her own phone and dialed 911 while standing on my dock. "I need to report an act of aquatic terrorism," she told the dispatcher. "Yes, terrorism. He's preventing senior citizens from accessing their constitutional right to fish." 20 minutes later, a sheriff's deputy arrived to find Beverly still on my dock, now lying spread-eagle across it to prevent what she called illegal exclusion. The deputy, a young guy who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, listened patiently while Beverly cited 17 different HOA bylaws, 3 maritime precedents she'd Googled, and something about the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. Then he turned to me. I handed him a folder containing my property deed, the original dock permit from the county, clearly marking it as private, and a copy of the HOA charter that explicitly stated my property was exempt from shared amenity regulations due to pre-existing structures. The deputy reviewed the documents, looked at Beverly still sprawled on my dock, and sighed. "Ma'am, you're trespassing on private property," he said. Beverly sat up so fast she nearly fell into the lake. But the HOA voted. We had a quorum. She said, scrambling to her feet, pulling soggy papers from her fanny pack. The deputy held up his hand. "The HOA can't override property law. You need to leave now, or I'll have to cite you for trespassing." Beverly's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. She tried arguing about easements, community wellness, and even threw in something about discriminating against her yoga class that wanted to do sunrise sessions on my dock. The deputy just pointed toward the gate and waited. What happened next was beautiful. I'd been recording the entire encounter on my phone, including Beverly destroying my sign, trespassing after being asked to leave, and making a false 911 call. I compiled the footage along with videos from my security cameras showing weeks of harassment and submitted everything to both the HOA board and the county legal department. I also hired a lawyer who specialized in property rights and HOA disputes. Turns out, Beverly had been overstepping her authority since day one, making up rules and selectively enforcing made-up violations against residents she didn't like. My case was just the most egregious example. The investigation that followed was thorough and damning. Beverly had been using HOA funds for personal expenses, including the drone she'd been flying over my property. She'd fabricated entire sections of the HOA bylaws, adding them to official documents without board approval. The Shared Amenities Clause, she'd cited. Completely made up. The emergency board meeting she'd called on my lawn. She'd never actually filed the paperwork. The county attorney described her actions as a pattern of harassment and abuse of power that exposed the HOA to significant legal liability. The other board members, realizing they could be held personally responsible for her actions, moved quickly to distance themselves. At the emergency HOA meeting that followed, held in the community center to accommodate all the residents who showed up, the board voted unanimously to remove Beverly as president. But that was just the beginning. The county fined her $2,000 for filing a false police report and another $1,000 for destruction of private property. The HOA itself was fined $5,000 for failing to properly oversee their president's actions. They also had to pay my legal fees and issue a formal apology acknowledging that my dock was, and always had been, private property. The best part came when the board announced that Beverly was permanently banned from holding any HOA position and prohibited from entering any resident's private property without written permission. Beverly's face during the announcement was a masterpiece of emotions, cycling through disbelief, rage, and finally defeat. She stood up halfway through the reading of the charges against her, pointed a shaking finger at me, and declared, "This isn't over. The lake belongs to everyone." Security had to escort her out while she ranted about filing appeals with the state HOA Oversight Committee, which apparently doesn't exist. As they led her away, she turned back one more time and shouted, "You'll rue the day you crossed Beverly Hutchinson." Someone in the crowd responded with, "Yeah, we already rue the day we elected you." The room erupted in applause. Beverly was formally served with a restraining order the next day, requiring her to stay at least 100 feet away from my property. She violated it within a week by trying to launch a protest flotilla of pool floaties, earning herself 30 days in county jail and another $2,000 fine.